It's okay if you're on the right, my dude. My goal is to be able to reach people like you. Like I'm a lefty. I'm a market socialist. And my goals are to empower workers and to decommodify parts of our economy that make sense to decommodify while maintaining a strong market system of uh, of the economy. So I think we could actually agree on a lot of the values that I hold dear. You know, I'm also pro gun, so don't have to worry about me taking your guns, comrade. Well, comrade, comrade is just as like a term of like endearment, like we're all working in this together. We're all just trying to scrape by. Unless you're incredibly rich, in which case I encourage you donate to my channel somehow. Subscribe, please. Um, yeah, Jose of Scranton. Trump has dropped over the last week to 11%. It's real, not super good for the Trumpster. Um, yeah, like the general rules here. Okay, fellow citizen. I'm a patriotic American. I love America. Um, Fellow citizen, I just encourage you, please don't be hateful or disrespectful in chat, and you will do a-okay. We we have had a lot of vigorous dissent in our community. Okay, uh, I argued a couple weeks ago with an anarcho-capitalist who wanted to based his entire political ideology on hating women and wanting to enslave them. So, like, I have a lot of tolerance for people who have different political ideologies. Just don't be a dick about it. Um, and that guy, after I finished arguing with him, I did ban him because my community can't have people in it advocating for slavery. I, I draw the line. Okay, that's one of the areas where I draw the line. Yeah, there's some Ayn Rand shit. I have I have less than zero respect for Ayn Rand. Um, oh, yeah, William of Orange, I do not advocate for violent revolution in the slightest. I advocate for common sense reforms that are based on data that we have. Like, that's my position. I don't. I generally don't think we have as good of outcomes if you look at history, and I have studied history, like that was part of my degree program. Um, we generally have worse outcomes when there are violent revolutions. Um, and that can go for a lot of different systems. Like when it comes to, for example, like fighting for freedom from colonialism. Um, for in the case of America, it worked out very well, but there are other places where it didn't necessarily work out so great. Or even in very developed countries at the time, like the French Revolution. I don't think that process went really well, and then it delivered the world Napoleon. So like there, in some cases it works, America. In other cases it doesn't work, France. And I generally would like to avoid violent revolution if at all possible. Um, Equity and equality, I look on it with suspicion. Yeah, I agree. There are a lot of people who confuse the two terms. And I think there are also a lot of people who confuse the phrases equality of outcome and equality of opportunity. I don't necessarily believe that we're ever going to achieve a system, or necessarily we should be trying to achieve a system of equality of outcome where like everyone is treated the same. I don't think we can actually do that, and it might not be a good system to achieve. Um, but I think that we can more fairly and more equitably go after a system that is equality of opportunity. And I know a lot of people like talk about how America does that very well, and I would agree to a certain extent that it does do that well, but part of my issue is that there's a difference between positive and negative freedom. And in America, a lot of the, I believe, a lot of the systems we have in place and a lot of the prevailing political thought enforces an idea of negative freedom, i.e., well, there are no restrictions on you, so why aren't you achieving? You know. However, I believe in positive freedom, wherein I would like to build a system and a society that has mechanisms in place and systems in place that would help people achieve their full potential. You know, like how many people right now in America have to spend their days flipping burgers when they could be our next up and coming Einstein? You know, um, we could get a lot more benefit out of our society if we were able to empower people to pursue those dreams while also not like shitting on people who spend their lives doing work like flipping burgers. You know, like you should be able to flip a burger and live a life, and that should be good. You know, um, that's my idea anyway. Um, I also think that generally positive freedom, like I see you don't agree with positive rights. I don't necessarily think about positive rights. I think about positive freedom. I want people to have as much freedom as possible, and if that means that we have to build in some mechanisms to help people succeed over, whatever barriers they might face initially, I'm okay with that, you know? And I think that overall, that generally benefits our society to have people empowered so that they can succeed. Isn't that distorting the meaning of freedom? Well, no. I think that, for example, if you take out, for example, like right now, we have a lot of people who have to spend all of their time working, or else they're going to go homeless and go into a vicious cycle of poverty that they can't easily escape from. Well, what if we eliminated that kind of a barrier to their success by decommodifying, to some extent, housing? Now, that doesn't mean making all housing the same or taking away property from people who have property, but it does mean, maybe we build some nice, uh, comfortable places to live. Maybe they're not super high end, but they can serve as places that people can go without having to pay to live there. There would still be an incentive, for example, to earn money to be able to buy your own house, your own property, um, in order to be able to live a better style of life. But at a base level, you wouldn't be on the street and homeless. And having that kind of a system, by the way, has a number of benefits on our society, like reducing tax burdens, improving the efficiency of our healthcare system, and removing like burdens in that way. There are a number of benefits of providing housing in this way, and that's stuff that I advocate for. Um, Well, yeah, I mean, William of Orange, I think that by necessity, living in a society means that we do have obligations to each other. Um, I just generally think that, like, I pay taxes so that we can have roads, right? Everyone gets to use the road equally. Why not pay taxes so that everyone has access to a place to live, even if they're in a bad economic position? Um, Yeah, I mean, maybe this is just like a fundamental difference between us, but I think that my view of a society that enforces like a positive freedom enables more people to live happier, more productive lives, and that would in turn improve your quality of life. So by working together, we can actually collectively improve the quality of life for all of us, rather than some of us having uh, more luck by virtue of being born into wealthier families, or more uh, more advantages due to being born ably bodied, or not getting into a horrific car accident or something like that. Um, I want to live in a society where those things don't necessarily dictate your success. Would it be possible to pay taxes to give housing, heat, running water, energy, etc. to all homeless people in the USA? Yes, Pear Tree. I would say that the kind of society that I want to live in is a society that decommodifies all of those things for every American. Whether or not you're rich or poor, I think that those things should be decommodified. So that means you buy a house. Electricity is just something that you should get. It shouldn't be like a service you have to pay for or anything like that. I think we should move away from commodifying things like that, because it's a net benefit to our entire economy to do so. Like there are economic incentives for us to do this, by the way, and it also improves the quality of life of people in general. And by improving the quality of life of people in general, we make people more efficient, we make people happier, and happier people become even more productive. Like, this is actually like something that they'll teach you if you go to like business school or something like that. But workers that have their basic needs fulfilled become far more efficient and better workers. So, for example, I believe if you meet all of the basic needs of a worker, generally what I have seen from like business management courses is like an improvement in productivity by something along the lines of like 200%, because people aren't having to like people can care more about their work. Um, and I don't know that necessarily. I don't necessarily know that like universal income is something that I would get behind. Maybe if it's done right. I don't. I'm but a small-brained socialist. Okay, I don't know everything there is to know about universal basic income. I think that there are good ways to do it. There are also ways to do it that wind up becoming tools to that ultimately are used to like benefit landlords and corporations, and I'm not super behind that idea if that's the way it's implemented. Um, don't repeat yourself. Me? Am I repeating myself? Um, you did say small brain socialist. Oh, well, I mean, again, a lot of my positions are backed up by data. For example, I would like to fulfill the first tenet of socialism by having a system by which private companies are slowly over time transitioned into worker co-ops. For example, anytime a business would like to sell, they first have to offer the sale of the company to the workers working at the company. I think that that would be a really good. Um, I think that that would be a really good system to have, and I think that that would be good because worker co-ops tend to be more efficient, more effective at producing um, products. Workers tend to be happier. They're better compensated, better paid. Um, and those companies tend to have better resistance to unfavorable market forces or disasters, stuff like that. About when it comes to worker co-ops, I think all of that seems really good, and we should have a system that encourages those kinds of cooperatives to flourish. And we have them right now, by the way. Like Ocean Spray is a $2 billion per year worker co-op company in the United States. We have these already, and they're already wildly successful. I believe like the success rate of a worker co-op on startup is like something like two times that of a, or no, I don't think it's that much. It's like 10 or 15% more likely to stay in business than a traditional business company. Um, so like stuff like that is why I support worker co-ops. And like all of that is backed up by empirical research. It's just we tend not to want to give up this dream of like people owning companies and getting more value out of them than they actually put in via work. And I would like to prioritize the amount of labor that workers do over the unmitigated wealth that rich people are able to extract from businesses. The thing I find mostly suspicious about this is worker co-ops are already legal and something you can just do. Yeah, exactly. But what I would like to do, for example, is that I've tried to start a worker co-op. It's actually incredibly difficult to do. Um, I like it. I have a business plan. I have all kinds of ways to do this. But the issue is that there aren't a lot of people out there that you can go to. Like, for example, if you want to start a company, um, and you want to find a lawyer to help you start your company, that's actually relatively easy to do. There are a lot of lawyers that specialize in starting companies in given areas. Finding a lawyer to help you start a worker co-op and navigate those laws properly is very hard to do. So I would like to simplify laws and streamline laws, and maybe even provide incentives because it is generally harder to get funding for worker co-op businesses, because there's less of a profit motive in. Not that there isn't a profit motive, but there's slightly less of a profit motive in investing in a worker co-op. Um, yeah, so I would like to get rid of government red tape. I would like to have there be some kind of a loan program that is available to worker co-ops from the government. And given that the rate of success for worker co-ops is far greater than that of traditional businesses, I think that that would actually be something that pays off, especially given the data we have on worker co-ops, making painting them out as more efficient and better investments generally for the wider economy. So like stuff like that's what I'm in favor of. And having a system where companies aren't forced to sell their like to their workers when they want to sell, but having that offer have to be on the table, I think is something that is generally a way that we can, with free choice, slowly transition towards a worker co-op model that dominates our society, um, rather than this current privatized model that we have. Um, because there is, for example, a lot of data that suggests if the average American wage had kept up with productivity as it had up until the 1970s, the average salary in the United States would be over $100,000 today. But it's not. And the reason it's not is because a lot of rich assholes are taking that extra money and pocketing it for themselves. So I would like to live in a world that you know properly properly rewards people for their hard work. Um, that's my basic premise. Someone shouldn't have more freedom than you because they were born wealthier than you. You should be able to work and make a respectable living doing that. That's my basic pitch anyway. That's what I'm saying in terms of defining freedom. What do you mean? I suppose it's just fundamentally different, but I don't have a positive freedom. Well, yeah, we disagree on that, but I think that by you embracing negative freedom, you're just embracing the current status quo where people who are born into more advantaged positions than you or I are advantaged in that society because they're born with more advantages. And I believe in a society where maybe we should equalize things a little bit more and help everyone succeed. Meaning that if you're born into a poor family, you can succeed just as much as someone who's born into a comparatively more wealthy family. I would like to live in a society like that, And I think that a society like that would be a net benefit for everyone involved, both the wealthy and the less wealthy. You know. Um, and I mean, the role of government is whatever we say the role of government is. Like in China, it's the role of government is considered vastly different than it is in the United States. And so, yeah, I mean, if we have to redefine the role of government, I'm perfectly fine saying that maybe the government should help people succeed. Because right now, the government does help people succeed. It just largely helps rich people succeed. And I don't think that that is a very good system to embrace the status quo under. You know, like they're like why are we giving subsidies to oil companies when they're the wealthiest companies on the planet? You know, why are we why would we do things like that? Um, why don't we give subsidies to poor people who are trying to start businesses? You know, or just people who are trying to live and be productive members of society. It's shown that if we give them homes, they become far more productive and efficient. So, like, I looked at this a while ago, but it was shown that like giving someone housing if they're homeless, generally the payback on that is something like 2 to 1. Like you get $2 for every $1 you invest in homeless housing. Um, so like stuff like that, I think is good. I like I like you also want to change the role of government. I see the government already prioritizes different people. I just want them to prioritize people on the bottom rather than people on the top. You're of the opinion that the government should prioritize nobody. However, I think that there are pre-existing systems that we would need to address in order for the kind of society you'd prefer to live in would be anywhere near equitable. Because right now, like what we have the government stop interfering in private affairs, and what Jeff Bezos steamrolls all of us with his infinite amounts of money. I don't think that that's a good system either. But you know what, William of Orange, I appreciate that you are at least like not an insane conservative. You seem like a genuinely honest actor, and I appreciate that about you. I guess I'm of the opinion that we should treat a basic level of housing uh, like we treat roads. It should be something that the government just provides. Um, and I think that that would be a net positive for society. Oh yeah, monopolies should also be shattered. I 100% agree with that. Yeah, I really hope there's not a mask off moment for this because so far it's been a wholesome conversation. Yeah, right. If you build roads, you get more money. If you build basic housing for the homeless and decommodify that to an extent, you get more money as well. What I'm afraid of is if we gain more and more positive rights, the government has more and more power over our everyday lives. Um, William of Orange, done randomly, was referencing the earlier debate, the earlier conversation I had with the gentleman who portrayed himself as a moderate conservative, and then slowly over the course of our conversation, went mask off and was like, "Yeah, slavery should be good, actually." Um, she's just joshing you. Um, no, and you know what? I totally recognize that as a concern. You know what? I get that concern, but ultimately, I think I think that right now the government has a lot of power over our lives already. I just think that maybe we redirect some of that power so that it's actually being good investments in working class people. Um, and yeah, the government might have some control over the decommodified areas of our economy, but it wouldn't have control over other sections of our economy. You know, there would still be large open market areas that people could conduct trade in and make profit in, and ways to spend that money. And there would still be that capitalistic economic incentive within a market socialist society. Jose tends to meme quite a bit. Um, I watched you vent. True. Um, um, gosh. Oh, are you? Wait, are you a Zoomer? Are you a Zoomer conservative, William of Orange? Okay, I was about to be very fascinated. Archangel the Cobb, you're just saying that because Jose is a femboy. Ah, a fellow millennial. Y'all are great. I love you all very much. Hmm. Yeah, this has been like a very positive conversation about market socialism. You used to be a conservative Zoomer. Wait, is that true? Are you Jose? Are you a reformed one as well? I didn't know that. Doesn't it bother you how much people freak out about the federal elections? Yes and no. Partially, what bothers me the most is that local elections have far more power over people's day to day lives, and people don't tend to pay very much attention to their local elections at all. That being said, like I do think that Donald Trump is like an open fascist. Like at his recent rallies, he's literally been talking about how he needs to protect conservative, not conservative, suburban women from low income housing, and literally that's those are just two barely concealed dog whistles about we need to protect white women from the black men. Like that's the kind of stuff that's like old as dirt racist stuff. Um and I would argue local elections do have more power over your day to day. Um and Amber Leaf, I think people should vote for Biden if they want more jobs. Investing in $2 trillion in green energy, there's going to be hella jobs under Joe Biden. Are you kidding me? Um, and yeah, I think that well, yeah, the federal government's going to take more money out of your paycheck, but I think like a lot of that is going to our bloated military, which I am not in favor of. I would much rather you save your money and we like yesterday we did a news story yesterday. We discussed a topic about US having military outposts all over Africa, and a lot of them are like off the books, and a lot of them like refuse to disclose whether or not they're actually being manned by like US soldiers. And there's like weird talks about like um military contractors being the ones manning it. There's also talk about like local forces that have in the past like retreated from terrorist attacks. Under Donald Trump, dozens of soldiers have died in Africa, and like why? why do we have these outposts there? And the answer is because we engage in American imperialism. We have troops in those countries so that we can enforce or use them as bargaining chips, rather, for our own private companies. You know, just another way that, like, we don't enforce negative freedom. We actively use our giant military to benefit a very select few in our society. Um, yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and I'm not in favor of that. I think that there's no earthly reason we should have a $200 million piece of military equipment in the middle of nowhere in Kenya, for example. Why do we have to have that in Kenya? What if we invested $200 million in one of our own local communities? I think that that would have much more benefit for the American people. Well, actually, William of Orange, I don't think our brand of American imperialism beats Chinese imperialism, because the way China has been doing imperialism is going in and building up infrastructure and needed necessities in a lot of these countries. And a lot of the way we implement imperialism in Africa for like our own self-interest is not in building up African nations or building up their infrastructure systems. A lot of the ways we do it is through military force projection. So um, right. I'm just saying that, like, I totally understand, and I understand where you're coming from, but I'm saying that China is doing their imperialism better and more attractively than we do our imperialism, because they're investing in these countries that in 30 years will be deeply indebted to them for their roads and bridges and uh, economies, you know? Whereas our brand of imperialism is putting soldiers in those countries and, uh, you know, either creating conflicts or uh, dissolving conflicts and getting involved in things that really aren't our business and probably causing more of a mess than we're actually fixing. Um, and using like the inter um, factionality of African nations to use our troops as bargaining chips, and that's not as effective. IMO. It's not as in our national interest. Oh no, I mean I think imperialism is bad, but I also think that like currently our economy is structured to benefit from that imperialism, specifically because we have our government caters to the wealthy elite. Our government could instead choose to cater to the working class and the general worker population in the United States. And I think that that would generally be a good thing that moves us away from imperialism. Um, and we could maybe just diplomatically align ourselves with countries in Africa to maybe, in a good faith, good natured way, invest in them um, in a way that doesn't further an imperialist agenda, you know? Oh, I don't think we're forced to be imperialistic at all. Like we won the Cold War. Like the Cold War was done in the 90s, and ever since then we've continued to engage in imperialism. And we didn't really have to. We just did it because it profits a lot of our private companies, our oil companies, our raw resource companies. You know, that stuff all benefits from our imperialism. Um, yeah, we won the Cold War by having huge guns, but we don't need huge guns anymore because we won the Cold War. Um, so continuing to build more huge guns is really just you know, starting to slowly morph every problem into a nail because we have bigger and bigger hammers. Yeah, people don't just give up on the prospect of having big guns, but like, what's the point of building bigger and bigger guns when we already have enough stockpiled nuclear munitions to literally destroy the planet like 3 times over? Like, okay, what more are we gonna do? Why do we need to keep building up our military machine when we have that at the ready at any given time? Right, there's more to the military than nuking everything. True. True. I just think that in 2020, having our military budget 15 times the size of any competing nation or comparably advanced nation is a drastic misuse of our funds. Um, and also engaging in imperialism, we could be doing it far cheaper through less militaristic means, and it would be more effective. Soft power and having bases all over is only important if you're interested in maintaining your imperialistic hegemony. And, like, I'm not particularly invested in that. Are you benefiting from our imperialistic hegemony? I'm not. Most people in the United States aren't, actually. So, like, in what ways are you directly benefiting from the United States having troops in Africa? Is your argument that if we didn't have troops in Africa, China would invade the United States? like, what? I guess what's your position here? What are hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of military expenditures across Africa doing for you? Yeah, controlling the Pacific is huge in terms of trade. I agree from an imperialistic standpoint. We are better positioned to enforce and dictate terms of trade agreements. Yes, that's true. Um, but also, what? No, people do put fucking tariffs on us and shit. China has tariffs on us. It also doesn't save us money on iPhones. The cheapest iPhones in the world are available in India. Like, yeah. Yeah, the Chinese tariffs aren't on all goods. That's true, but also China's economy is much more resilient than ours. Like, you also realize, like, modern countries don't necessarily need um, strong militaries in order to engage in decent trade, right? Like, Belgium, for example, doesn't need. I don't know why I said Belgium. Belgium, for example, doesn't need an expansive military presence across the globe to get decent trade negotiations. Wait, but they don't need to have a big military to engage in trade because of the United States? Well, the United. Do you mean that because they're part of the empire of the United States? Is Europe part of the dominion of the United States in your worldview? Well, you realize you can have allies without having military bases and like troops in their countries, right? Like, yeah. they get a good deal because they're our allies. They're yeah, but we don't like we could just be allies of African nations and not have troops stationed there as well. Can we be allies of China? Sure we could. China is a heavily capitalist state. The United States would get along very well with China. Uh and historically has when it comes to our businesses. Like even Donald Trump's own like gear is manufactured in China. Like what in your mind, what prevents us from being allies with China? Political differences? Like what? Like we're allies with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia literally found like funded the terrorists that did 9/11, and it's a monarchy. They're commies in name. But if they're commies in name, that doesn't mean that they're politically communist. So what's the political difference? Well, no. They're China's not a communist state. Okay, but yeah, but how is China obviously politically different than us? I want you to like expound on why you think that is. Voting, for example, and free speech. Yeah, but we're allies with countries that have extensive regulations on free speech, and we're allies with people that have very different ways of voting. For example, again, Saudi Arabia is a monarchy. They don't vote. And we're very close allies with Saudi Arabia. We let them kill an American journalist. What benefit does the USA have if they're allies with China? Well, if we're allies with China, then we don't have to have this back and forth dick measuring contest across the Pacific, you know? Um, we can have more equitable trade agreements. The difference is Saudi Arabia is far way less powerful than China. Well, then the issue is that China is powerful and not that there are political differences, right? Because there are political differences between us and Saudi Arabia, but that's not an issue. Well, then what's why is it a problem for China? So you have to have both. You have to have both power and political difference. Yeah, but I'm not sure what Germany has to do with this. Germany also has a different political system than us. If they're both manufacturing enemies, they won't get along. Well, I mean, that might be the case, but maybe the solution to that is to stop manufacturing enemies. They don't have the same idea of what a government ought to do. Well, but there are a lot of people in the United States who have different ideas of what the government ought to do. Like you and I, for example, we have different ideas of what the government ought to do. Well, but again, a lot of our allies are not democratic. There there are literally dictators in our block of allies. So like it's not it doesn't come down to political difference, I guess. And China, it seems like your only actual issue with China is that they're powerful and can resist the imperialism of the United States. Who besides the Saudis? I believe Hungary has a dictator now, or oh gosh, what's Czechoslovakia? No, it's not called that. Czech Republic. Or maybe I'm no, I might be thinking of a different country. Wait a minute. Yeah, nope, not the Czech Republic. Oh yeah, you have the leader of Belarus, for example. Um, yeah, Hungary is another one that's at the very least very close to becoming a dictator. Viktor Orban. Um, there's a lot of fascist rhetoric going on over there. There's a lot of allies that don't neatly fit into this democratic bubble that we have. Um, we'll have for a long time we were on very good terms with China. It's really only in the last several years that China became a major talking point. Oh yeah, Duterte in the Philippines. That's another one. Well, no, Duterte plays like a weird game in his home country where he plays both sides. He both cuddles up to China and the United States because he gets certain benefits from both. So do you think a Chinese hegemony would be better than what we have now? Well, I think countries should stop engaging in imperialism. I think imperialism is fundamentally bad and fundamentally spreads a lot of inequality across the world and hurts a lot of people. And I think that we should, in general, stop doing such things that hurt people. I I am in favor of doing less things that are bad and more things that are good. Um, Now, granted, that's likely not going to happen. Like if I became president tomorrow, um, like I probably wouldn't order the ending of opposition to Chinese imperialism. Um, However, I do think that there are things that we can do to normalize relations between China and the United States, and perhaps work together to, mutually disband these attempts to um, promote imperialism. I mean, I think that William of Orange, I think for whom imperialism is better, like very obviously for us living in the United States, American imperialism would seem better than Chinese imperialism, but also the people living in China, obviously they're going to prefer Chinese imperialism. It's a very subjective stance. I care more about maybe the perspectives of people on the ground in the countries where the imperialism is happening. For example, I think generally those people would prefer the imperialism not be happening at all. Um, They are just given no real choice in the matter. The difference is that for those people, the way that China goes about its imperialism is much more constructive and actually betters their lives. So I would prefer to switch to a model that is very similar, and so that we can build up good allies in the future, good allies that have strong economies, like Germany, for example. We rebuilt the entirety of Germany following World War II, or the entirety of you know West Germany following World War II, um, and that has worked out very well for us in the long run by creating a really strong ally. Similarly, in Japan, we have a very strong ally in Japan. Um, well, my goal isn't to kill flies. My goal is to build countries. It's very different. Um, yeah, exactly. Like, obviously, I have a preference for the United States because I live here, but I think that generally imperialism has historically been really bad and led to the deaths of literally billions of people. So I'm not in favor of it. Um, well, but William of Orange, the imperialism you accuse China of doing is more effective and better for the countries affected by it than the imperialism we engage in. So I'm in favor of adopting perhaps a more effective model that's also less destructive and more constructive, because I think that's generally a better thing to do. I'm not living in a fantasy world. I'm living in a world where things like that already happened and worked very well for us in the past. Yeah, and you're you're the one complaining that we need to have waste billions of dollars in military funding in Africa for no reason other than to oppose Chinese imperialism, and yet like you're like, what, they can't oppose us militarily, so what? Their imperialism is more effective than ours. Why? I guess my question is, why do you want to do imperialism poorly? Why do you want to do imperialism poorly and in a way that hurts people in the countries affected by it? I thought you were about freedom. Why are you for taking away the freedom of other countries? Seems like a seems like a conflict of well, that's partly why we were on good terms with China for a while, because we outsourced our production to China, because China was doing capitalism more effectively than us and was utilizing its large labor market. Could I say which part again? I was just saying, like, it seems like a con like your idea of being in favor of freedom conflicts with your idea that we should impose American will and values on other countries. That seems like it would conflict with your idea of what freedom means. And I'm curious as to how you reconcile that, because it seems to me like my policies are in favor of building up like people's freedom in America, but also elsewhere in the world. And your policies seem to be intent on embracing a status quo in America where people are less free, due to the way people are born into society, and while also taking away freedoms from people in other countries, which seems to run counter to your idea of how you're in favor of freedom. Well, no, it's not a lot of assumptions. You're in favor